Welcome to the Alcohol-Free Revolution podcast. My name is James Lloyd.
And I'm Steve Smith. We are both former professional drinkers turned qualified alcohol-free coaches.
We're here to inspire you to explore your best life alcohol-free. Whether you're sober curious, considering taking a break, or already loving life alcohol-free, this podcast is for you. Each week, we'll share ideas, tools, and conversations with the leading voices from within the alcohol-free space.
And our goal is simple: to give you the confidence to try it for yourself with stories and strategies that show just how powerful pressing pause on the booze can be.
I coach high achievers, leaders and entrepreneurs who want to reset and regain control of their relationship with alcohol. I focus on breaking down the neuroscience of drinking, because once you understand what's happening in your brain, everything changes. You can find out more about me at my website, alcoholfreecoach.com. Plus, we've recorded a special bonus episode where Steve interviews me about my journey and my work. Just search The Alcohol-Free Revolution, episode 9.
And I work with high-performing dads, helping them show up more consistently at home and at work, and also in their training, by building resilience and unlocking their true potential through an alcohol-free life. I'm also a qualified US ultramarathon coach. You can hear about my story in a bonus episode and connect with me on Instagram at sober.brilliant or at soberilliant.com.
Before we dive in, a quick favour. Please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss another episode.
And if you enjoy it, give us a 5-star review. It really helps others who are sober curious find the show, and together we can grow the alcohol-free revolution.
Thanks for listening. On with today's show.
Welcome back to the Alcohol-Free Revolution podcast. Today we are going to be speaking about alcohol-free alternatives, whether you're into beer, wine, kombuchas, alcohol-free spirits. It's a huge market that is absolutely exploding. And today we welcome a super special guest who's an absolute expert in this field. Her name is Denise Hamilton Mace, and she's a mindful drinking expert. She's a podcast host, speaker, and a writer. And I know what you're probably thinking. Well, isn't this show all about going alcohol-free? Well, it is, but on this show, we welcome different perspectives from experts in their field, and Denise is certainly that. I've personally followed Denise on social media for at least a couple of years because her content is absolutely exceptional. She's the host of Low No Drinker podcast, a weekly resource that helps listeners find, understand, and enjoy the world of low, no, and light alcoholic drinks. Previously, she also founded and edited Low No Drinker magazine, the leading global publication for mindful and sober curious drinkers. And that follows her own 24-year hospitality career. So if you want to find out more about the best alcohol-free alternatives, you can go to listen to her podcast, or you can stay tuned and hear what she's got to say right now. Denise, welcome to the Alcohol-Free Revolution podcast.
Thank you for having me, guys. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, look, we'll jump straight into it. Denise, I would love to learn a little bit more about your background, how you came to, be doing what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned in the intro, I have a background in hospitality. So I spent 24 years working in pubs, bars, restaurants, clubs. And during the pandemic, I happened to be on maternity leave with child number 2. And like many people, I was made redundant at that time. And I knew that I didn't want to go back into hospitality. It's a very difficult industry to be in with 2 young kids. There's a lot of socializing. There's a lot that goes into it that just wasn't fitting with where I was in my life at that time. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I took some time out to sort of figure myself out, be a bit of a mum. And during that time, I watched a documentary with my husband, and it's called Game Changers. And it's about vegan athletes. And it was fascinating. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I did. It was great.
It's absolutely brilliant. And so we watched it very skeptically. We were like, oh, these are going to be all sort of super skinny ultra marathon runners with no muscle structure to them. And it was all sorts of people. They were like weightlifters, boxers, sprinters, and everything. And so we decided to go vegan for a little while to see how we would feel. And we felt fantastic. We're not still vegan. It's very difficult. And what happened was, while I was doing that, I felt fantastic. And the only times I didn't feel great were the times after I'd been drinking alcohol. And I realized that it was a couple of days later, I was still feeling groggy. I was still feeling sluggish. I was short-tempered. I was snappy. And so I realized that alcohol just wasn't serving me the way that it had been in my past. It had been a regular part of my life, daily drinking, working in hospitality. It is part and parcel of your job. And so I started looking around at what else I could drink. And while I was doing that, I found that a lot of the information I came across said, if you're looking at changing the way you drink, then perhaps you have a quote unquote problem. Perhaps you have an issue. And that wasn't the case for me. I just wanted to make some changes because I knew that it would be better for me. And so, because I couldn't find any information that I wanted, I figured there must be other people like me. I'm not that special. There must be other people that think the same way that I do. And so, why don't I help get that information out there? So, I decided to create the magazine, Low No Drinker magazine. I have now sunsetted it, but for 2.5 years, it was the leading global publication, as you said, for mindful and sober curious drinkers. And it was all about the drinks to begin with. And then people started saying, but we want more lifestyle stuff. We want to know about places to go. We want to hear about other people's stories. So I incorporated that into it as well. After a few months of doing the magazine, I then decided to launch my podcast. I did the podcast, and you guys might recognize this feeling. I did the podcast, I did about 5 or 6 episodes, and then I stopped because it was so hard. Podcasting is hard.
It's not easy.
But something kept calling me back to it. And about 4 months later, I relaunched the show. And since then, I haven't looked back. I've absolutely loved producing it. This week, I just released episode 112.
Oh, my word.
And it's a mixture of interviews with brand founders, independent brands, big brands. I just interviewed somebody from Peroni, Asahi, the other day.
Did you?
Yes, that was really interesting. And then some solo episodes where I talk about the way that alcohol shows up in our lives and what we can do to mitigate that, and the fact that people can moderate, they can drink mindfully, they can give up, they can, there's just options. I want people to know that life is full of choices and that they need the information to make the best decisions for themselves.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think you've hit it on a note there, I think, is that people tend to look at drinking as binary. You're either doing it or you're not, but there are kind of shades in the middle. And I know you've recently rebranded, your podcast from, Low No to Mindful. What drove that decision? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the podcast was always called the Low No Drinker podcast because that was the name of the business, and you sort of just you go with that, don't you? But my content has always been about, it's always been aimed at those people who are perhaps sober curious, or they're mindful drinkers, or they're considering changing the way that alcohol shows up in their life. I've never been, I've never approached this as talking just about abstaining or just about being teetotal. The reason for that is because I find that, like me, there are people out there that if you say to them, alcohol's really bad for you, you need to stop, you're making lots of bad decisions, it's bad for your health, all they're going to do is do exactly what I would have done back then, just go, shut up, I'm going to the bar for another shot.
Yeah.
People know that alcohol is bad for them. They might not know all the nuances and all the details of it, but grown adults know that alcohol isn't good for them. They don't need me to be shouting that at them. What I find is that people need is support. They need understanding. They need to know what their options are. They need to know the facts. And they need to know that they are entitled and empowered to make choices to better their lives, even if that means just one drink at a time. Now, the outcome of that might be that someone decides that they want to remove alcohol completely. But it might be that they just cut down and actually they recognize that when they've got important things to do, or when they've got family events to go to, or when they've got a sporting event they want to train for, that they have the power to say no to alcohol for those times without having to justify it, without having to feel guilty, without having to make up excuses, So I think that there wasn't enough people talking to that middle ground, which is the majority of the population. So research from places like CAM Insights show that 75% of the UK population are moderating or wanting to moderate their alcohol intake in some way. So they need support, and they need to know that it's okay to do that and that they have options.
It was it was very interesting hearing you saying there. I think you said you met with someone leading from Peroni and Asahi. Did you get a sense of how their approach is to the market now? Because I think we see product placement quite a lot from alcohol-free beer in sports and etc. And something we've often discussed is whether that's just clever product placement, or how did you find the sense of feeling during your interview as to how they're approaching the low alcohol market or the zero alcohol market?
And you know what, Steve? I asked him that. I did. I asked him
Great.
outright. I spoke to a chap called Andy Wingate, who is the Category and Insights Director for Asahi UK, which is the company that owns Peroni as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they have Asahi 00 and Peroni 00. Now, I said to him, you've got a lot of these brands like yourself, like Guinness at the rugby, Heineken at the Formula One and all these places. And a lot of people might be thinking that what you're doing is just jumping onto the bandwagon so that you get an opportunity to promote your full strength drink. And hats off to him. Andy was very, very honest. And he said, look, of course, when we promote our 0%, the name of our brand is in there. So it does promote our full strength alcohol drink as well. But his viewpoint was that they as a company have recognized that alcohol-free drinking as an essential part of their business plan, because it is the way that people are drinking is changing. And for them to have a sustainable business and to continue on, they need to recognize and to serve those people who want to drink differently for any reason, for any occasion. And they're not going to create a brand new brand when they've got the history of the name behind them, because in business, who would do that? One thing I found interesting that he did say is that their target, and I can't remember the time frame, I think it was within 10 years or so, is that they want 15% of their company revenue to be coming from their alcohol-free drinks portfolio within their European regions. So they are targeting this as a long play and something that they want to continue to grow and to nurture. But yes, he recognizes that they do benefit from the promotion of their full strength drinks as well. But he and I also acknowledge that alcohol isn't going anywhere. So it would be naive to think that they should only promote their 0% and completely forget about their full strength alcohol, because whether you agree with booze or not, it's so ingrained in our society and our culture that in our lifetime, chaps, it's not going anywhere.
No. It's about education.
Yes.
It's about people understanding, and I think that's the message we try to bring across. We're not here to bang the drum and say never drink again. And I don't think that's the goal of anybody in this space particularly. But I think we're catching up, but we've been so far behind the curve in terms of education around just making people aware of the negative effects of drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I think that people definitely need to know and understand more about alcohol and about the drinks and about alcohol-free drinks. It's very much an education piece throughout this category that is lacking. And I hope to try and bring some of that enlightenment to people so that they can be armed with the right information to make the choices that are best for them. And I think that is achieved by saying to someone, look, you're grown, you can make your own choices. Did you know that X, Y, and Z? If you still choose to do it, then more power to you. You've got to do you. I don't think we can tell people what they should and shouldn't be doing. And nobody wants that.
One of the things that I've noticed is, you probably to explain this a lot better than I can, Denise, is we do tend to see a lot, particularly with beer, we see quite a few regular favorites appearing in bottled form in the fridges, but not so much on draft. And it's a question that I get asked a lot is how come you don't get it on draft? I know you've got some insight on this. Why is that?
Because draft is hard in a nutshell. Steve, I know you've got a hospitality background, so you'll understand this. So there's a couple of different reasons for this. One, when you're looking at a venue, if you're going into a pub and they've got, say, for example, 4 lines, so 4 draft beers on tap, what you need to do as an alcohol-free beer producer is you need to get that landlord to agree that they should take off one of their alcohol full taps, which makes them money, makes them profit, people come in for, and replace it with an alcohol-free draft. If that venue doesn't have perhaps a good footfall, so it's a quieter pub with not that many people going to it, if people aren't asking for it outright, that landlord quite rightly is going to say, well, is this going to make me any more money? Another issue is that when alcohol-free beer sits in a barrel, so in a cellar, it needs to be cared for very, very carefully. If you walk into a pub cellar, you'll think, oh my God, these places are horrible, but they're actually really, really difficult to take care of. And you have to do something called cleaning the lines once a
Mhm.
week to make sure that what's in the lines, what the drink that's coming through is safe for people to drink.
Hmm.
When you have alcohol-free beer sitting in a cellar, if it's not being pulled through enough, so if it's not selling enough, it sits in those lines. It starts to ferment in those lines. So a 0% beer that goes in a barrel at 0%, it could sit in that barrel for a while and actually start to ferment. And then what comes out of the tap at the end might be higher than 0%, for example, if that's what's being advertised. And
Mm.
that's not safe. You can't do that. Whether or not you agree with the 0% or 0.5%, people need to get what they have asked
Yeah.
for.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of cost involved in it. There needs to be enough people asking for it. So there's a lot of different reasons why alcohol-free beer on draft is hard. What I would say, and I always say to people listening, is that if you want alcohol-free beer on draft in your local pub, the best thing you can do is tell that pub.
Mm.
Because landlords need to know that people want it. Their fear is, I'll get it and no one will buy it, and I'll have to throw it away. But if enough people say, I want it, I want it, I want it, they'll go, oh, okay, all right, I need to do something about this.
That is really fascinating insight. I didn't realize it was quite as complex as that. I guess as well is that obviously, when people go into a pub and they're drinking full fat beer, you're going to drink 5, 6, 7, 10 pints, however many. But with alcohol-free beer, you're maybe going to have one or two, right? So you're right. The turn is also going to be a lot less. So you're not going through the barrels quite so quickly. I did hear as well that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that beer that doesn't contain alcohol doesn't last as long because the alcohol, um, I don't know what the term is, but it basically keeps it fresh, as it were, because it's got alcohol in it. Is there anything in that? Do you know? Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. So alcohol is a preservative. Alcohol does a fantastic job. It does two great jobs in a drink. It does lots of things, but two of the best things it does in an alcoholic beverage is one, preserving it. So
Mm.
that means that it can last for a very long time. That's why when people go on holiday to Faliraki and then they find that bottle of ouzo in their cupboard 10 years later, it might
Still
not taste
good.
very nice, but it's
Didn't to
still
start with.
fine. Yeah. And the other thing it does is it enhances flavor. So alcohol helps molecules to bind and and the longer the drink lasts, the more those flavors have time to develop.
Mm.
So when you remove alcohol or you don't put alcohol into a drink, it doesn't have that preservation ability. So they just don't have that same shelf life, which is why you'll see whether it's on draft or bottles or cans or whatever. Your alcohol-free drinks don't last as long. Now, a lot of brands are working on this, and the shelf life for a lot of alcohol-free drinks is now up to around 18 months. But you need to check beforehand and just make sure.
Mm.
I think I know the answer to this, but just for the benefit of those listening, a question I often get asked is why do I have to pay the same price for an alcohol-free beer in a pub versus an alcoholic beer in a pub? Now, and then when you go to the supermarket, they're significant, well, not always, but significantly cheaper, certainly when it comes to the sort of 0.05 versus the 0.5% alcohol. Would you mind sharing kind of insights into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, some of what we've said already in terms of preservation. So alcohol allows a drink to last longer, which means that it can be produced in larger batches. Independent brewers or drinks makers or fermenters or wineries, whatever you want to look at, they don't have that luxury of having their drink last a long time. So it means that they can't produce as much in one go. They also don't have as big a market. So what happens is when it comes to production, they don't get the opportunity to take advantage of price breaks. You'll know if you go to a big warehouse, it's cheaper to buy your toilet roll in bulk than it is to go to Tesco Metro and buy a packet of 4. So you get economies of scale in that regard. And then in terms of actually producing the drink itself, there is so much that goes into producing an alcohol-free drink, whether it's a 0% or a 0.5%, that isn't factored into a full strength drink. So if you're having a de-alcoholized drink, so that is a drink that originally contained alcohol, but it has been removed. The brewer has to make their beer. They make it up to the normal percentage that they do, say 5%. Then it has to go through another process where you're going to remove that alcohol. Once that alcohol is removed, that's going to impact the flavor. So then it needs to go through another process where they add things back in, whether that is more hops, whether that is whatever it is that they're making. So that's 2 extra processes on top. So already you can see that producing an alcohol-free drink isn't just as simple as taking the alcohol out, and therefore it should be cheaper. Also, we have to remember that one of the biggest complaints about alcohol-free drinks in the past has been their quality. You know, there's the Beck's Blue years, the
Caliber
years,
years,
all of those ones. Yeah.
Poor old Caliber.
And people do that. They shudder, right? And they say, oh, these were absolutely awful. And I always find it quite amusing that people will quite happily complain that a drink tastes terrible. They want it to taste better, but yet you're not prepared to pay the money for the quality drink. And all that money that you're paying goes back into research and development to make the drinks better for you. And that's what we want, right?
Absolutely.
I guess so.
Absolutely.
There's no tax on it though, right? That's the thing I guess that irks me a little bit. Well, I don't think there's any tax on it. I would assume.
So there's no tax on it, but the assumption is there that the tax that you pay is exactly the same as all the other costs that are involved. So yes, a brand might save, they'll save a few pennies per litre on the tax, but they're spending pounds per litre on research, development, ingredients, production, keep making it safe for you to drink. All the things that go into producing it cost more than the saving that you get from not paying a little bit of tax on each can.
I think that research and development is so evident now. And I think, you know, as the alcohol-free or the low-no market moves on, the choice is so huge now, particularly in terms of beers. And, you know, we've commented on this pod a few times that certainly for myself, I'm so glad I didn't decide to go alcohol-free 10 to 15 years ago, because we would have literally been grabbing a bottle of dusty Caliber off the back shelf. But that's obviously been driven by awareness and everything going forward. What's kind of your take on the wine market? Because now that we're starting to shift with the beers, that's probably the biggest question I get. And I think the first person that can really crack the wine perfectly is going to be a very wealthy man or woman going forward.
You're absolutely right. It's one of the areas that I get asked about the most as well. It's, you know, beer has done a fantastic job. You know, you can have alcohol-free beers now that taste nigh on exactly the same as their full strength alternatives. And if that's what you're looking for, then you're golden. The thing with alcohol-free wine is that it is such a young category. So if you compare the production of alcohol-free beer, people who have been making beer have also been making alcohol-free beer for around about the same amount of time. It's just, it's part of the production process. It's something that if you look at the biggest brew houses, as I mentioned before, places like Germany who have a brew house in every town, every brew house also produces an alcohol-free beer. So the systems are in place, the knowledge is in place, the expertise, the history, it's all there. Alcohol-free wine is steeped in in a lot of tradition, in a lot of expectation. We use terms like old world and new world when we talk about wine. Old world being things from, say, France and Spain, and new world being Americas and Canadas and Australias. But it's all about tradition, and this is how it's supposed to be done. They haven't been playing with alcohol-free wine for the same amount of time. A lot of the alcohol-free wine producers that I speak to, when they talk about when they decided to get into the game, and they just got laughed at. And people are like, well, it's not wine. It's never going to be good. You can't do that. So they're fighting an uphill battle. The alcohol-free wine industry, as we know, is only a few years old. I challenge you to find any industry that in a few years has got it hit the nail on the head. It is getting better though, you know, and I'm not going to blow smoke and pretend that all alcohol-free wines are great. I've tasted some god-awful drinks, but I've also tasted some lovely stuff. What I will say is sparkling wines are doing a lot better than still wines. That's because they have the bonus or the benefit of the carbonation and the extra sugars. Which is one of the things that people miss from alcoholic drinks is the sugars and the sweetness that you get in there. Still wines are definitely more of a challenge. Still white is doing a lot better. Still rosés are coming on nicely, and still reds still have a bit of work to do. But there are brands like Iceberg, who are doing a fantastic job, Natureo, who are, I think, a Spanish producer who've won so many awards. They're doing a great job. So there are some out there. It's trial and error. You're going to have to put your money where your mouth is. Go and buy a bottle, try it, and feedback. Email the brand and say, I didn't like this because, and tell them what you want them to do better. We all need some feedback.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a bit with wine as well. I've got to be careful what I say here because I've already offended half the wine industry with the post I put out on LinkedIn last week. But I think you've kind of touched on it in a much more polite way. There's a bit of snobbery around wine, isn't there?
Yes.
Which there isn't around beer, And yeah, I think that in terms of acceptance from wine connoisseurs, I think that's a bit of a challenge as well, potentially.
Yeah, there's a snobbery and there's an expectation. And I think that when you are look as well at something like the ABV. So the ABV, the alcohol by volume of a beer, was average in the UK is 5%. Your average ABV of wine will be 12, 13. It's creeping up now to around 14%. When you are removing or not including alcohol in a beer, you're only changing 5% of that drink.
Yeah.
When it's not in a wine, you're changing 14% of that drink.
Yeah,
It's not reasonable to expect that something with a 14% difference is going to taste exactly the same.
Yeah, not thought of that. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do. They'll have their favorite red wine. They'll love a Merlot, an Argentinian Malbec, and they'll taste that, and then they'll go and taste an alcohol-free one, and they'll say, "Well, this doesn't taste like the one I had yesterday." No, it's a different drink, and I think it's really important when people are trying these drinks that you manage your expectations. At this stage, it is not going to taste exactly the same. But what you could be looking for is something that gives you that same feeling that you can use in that same moment, that has that wine-shaped element to it, that makes you feel that you're still part of the group, that you can pour into a wine glass, that smells nice, that tastes nice, that ritual that makes you feel like you're part of the group. You're an adult having an adult drink. You're not having to have a fruit shoot from the back of the menu because it's the only thing that they've got. So
I think by that same logic and the kind of sugar content, etc., might explain some of the growth of alcohol-free spirits. Again, there's some god awful ones and there's some really good ones. A particular favourite of mine is the Tanqueray Sevilla Zero. I think it worked, and it's that sweetness, I guess. But I guess also with that, where you would have had 37.5 or 40% alcohol in a spirit, the fact that you're then removing that and mixing it with a tonic, and I know that Fever Tree in their promotions talk about 2/3 of your drink being the tonic, the actual flavour of the tonic's coming through more so than the kind of neutral-based spirit more neutral-based spirit. So it seems to be that spirits have launched pretty well as well. Everybody was jumping on the bandwagon for a while, and I think certainly when it comes to whiskies and rums and things like that, not that I've tried them, but I can't see how they work. Do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, spirits are they're quite interesting because, as you say, you're talking about 37 to 40% of the drink is completely changed. And then you're absolutely right. You make a really good point there, Steve, that when you then drown it in tonic water, you're like, well, I can't taste it. Well, that's because you've not given it a chance to shine through. One of the things that I love about the alcohol-free drinks category is that because it's so new, the rules aren't really the same. So whereas beforehand, Fever Tree did that huge campaign like you were talking about, 2/3 of your drink is the tonic and such. When it comes to an alcohol-free drink, perhaps it isn't 2/3 of it. Perhaps because the flavors are more delicate, then maybe only 1/3 of your drink needs to be the tonic, and you can have more of the spirit in there. It's not going to do you any harm, is it? Because there's no alcohol in it, so you can have as much as you want.
Yeah.
Again, there's the expectation factor that they're going to taste different. I think what's really exciting for me in alcohol-free spirits is not so much the white spirits. They are quite delicate. And I prefer bold flavors. I like strong flavors. I like spicy foods. I like deep flavors. So I like a lot of the darker spirits in the non-alc space. What's really exciting, for example, is Ben Branson, who is the founder of Seedlip, which is considered to be, So Seedlip kind of launched this drinks category as we know it now 10 years ago. And he's done some amazing stuff since then. And he's several months ago, launched the first sippable alcohol-free dark spirit. Now it's called Silva, Sylva, and I think I've got some on the shelf behind me. I know people are listening, but you guys can see it there.
Hmm.
And it is designed to be an alcohol-free dark spirit that you can sip on like you would sip a whiskey, just on the rocks. And I think that's really exciting.
That
He
is.
makes his from trees, so his big thing is going out onto his land and finding barks and you know bits of stumps of trees, and then taking them into his sonic maceration lab. I asked him, I still don't understand how it works, doing some vibration stuff and then making these dark spirits. The other great way of using non-alc spirits is in cocktails, which is a great way to feel like you're part of the group as well. So making your favorite cocktails, if you love a mojito, if you love a margarita, and being able to mix these drinks and still dance around the kitchen with your girlfriends, or still have, do a cheers with the fellas, and still have that same drinking experience.
Yeah, you touched on it there. Earlier. It's the ritual, isn't it? And we talk about this all of the time. It's if you can have a drink that looks beautiful and a nice big, kind of goldfish bowl glass, and it's got ice and fruit, and it just looks fantastic, and it's fizzing away. That's half the job done, isn't it? I think it's being able to recreate, because what's the difference between that and a regular gin and tonic? Just one's got alcohol in it. One's got a chemical in it. That's the only difference. It's what we project onto it in terms of that ritual is what really makes the difference.
Absolutely. And it's important that you do treat these drinks the same. The worst thing you can do is, keep your cans of your alcohol-free cocktails or your beers, whatever, on a table in a cupboard. Crack one open while it's still warm,
Mm.
standing in the kitchen next to the laundry and a pile of dishes. You're in a crappy mood. You don't put it into a nice glass with ice. You don't put a garnish in. You taste it. Of course, it's going to taste awful, but
Yeah.
treat it the same way that you would, like you said, a nice glass, nice garnish, at the right temperature, with the right foods, in the right environment. After a couple of drinks, there is honestly no different in your drinking experience,
Mm.
as long as you've got something that you can enjoy. It's about enjoying the flavor of it.
So Denise, we'll get some of your recommendations a little bit later on the show, because I'm dying to talk about specific brands that you really like.
Okay.
But so we've spoken about some of the sort of traditional alcohol alternatives, wine, beer, spirits. What is there outside of that in terms of people are going alcohol free and they don't necessarily want to drink sparkling water and lime? What other alternatives are there?
Well, so the next category that's really, really making its way in the world, making itself known, is the functional drinks category. And so functional drinks they come in several different categories, but the two major ones that you'll hear talked about all the time are adaptogenic drinks and nootropic drinks. Now, adaptogens are ingredients that help, to simplify, that help the body. So things that make you feel better, things that might give you some energy. Nootropics are ingredients that would help the mind. So things that might help your cognition or your memory or feeling a bit sharper. That's the basic introduction to adaptogens and nootropics. You then have other things as well in that category, like CBD drinks. If you're in the States, I'm sure you'll have some listeners around the world, they'll have their THC drinks and kava drinks and things like that. So there's a lot of different types out there. Now, functional drinks are great in that they offer people an opportunity to have they're often got quite a deep flavor because they've got ingredients in them that share a lot of natural aromas and scents and tastes. They could be in beers, in wines, in spirits, in sort of soft drink styles, in cocktails. So they're in a lot of different forms. That's quite interesting because a lot of the younger generation are really leaning into the functional drinks market. And I find this really interesting because what's happening is that I'll say our generation. So I'm 46 years old. So people of my age, we've grown up drinking. We know what our favorite beers are, wines, and so on and so forth. We know what a drink is supposed to taste like.
Yeah.
And the likelihood is that we're looking for something that reminds us of that, so we don't feel too much like we're missing out. But this sober curious generation, as they've been nicknamed, are coming up not experiencing alcohol the same way we did. but they still want something that gives them something a little bit extra. So they're leaning more into the functional drink space because they know that they might be able to get a little bit of a pep from it. They might be able to get a little bit of a buzz from it. Some of them do offer, do say that they offer that 1 or 2 drink feeling to help you get into the mood, but without any actual intoxicating ingredients in it. So I think it's a really interesting space to watch. I think it's one that needs a lot of education. I think most people don't know what these ingredients are. They don't know how much should be in their drink. I had a great conversation with a chap called Ollie Genbash, who is a mushroom fanatic, and we were talking about functional mushrooms, things like lion's mane that you get in lots of drinks, and he was saying that you need to be looking at how much is in there, how it's been produced, whether it's powdered, how it's been diluted, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of education that's missing around that space, but it's a very interesting space to be keeping an eye on.
I've tried Sentia, which
Yes.
with Dr. David Nutt's product. And it does give you a bit of a buzz. The other one, which I'm sure you probably tried, is Impossible Brew. I don't know if you tried that, Steve.
Yeah.
It's quite expensive, but it does give you this really weird kind of quite powerful buzz. And it's both of them the same. They kind of work on the GABA receptors, don't they? Where when you have if you drink a pint of Impossible Brew, first of all, I think the name's terrible, but it just putting it out there. But it does do something.
Just
to you.
someone else.
Sorry, I'm just a mesmer. But maybe we'll get them on at some point if we can to explain about it. But it's really hard to describe. But it kind of gives you like this. It's definitely a buzz. But if you have a bit too much of it in too much of a short space of time, it's a bit like having too much caffeine. I found. I kind of had. I drank a pint of it in a normal sort of time. I drink a normal pint of beer, and then had another one thinking, I'll have a couple of pints, and I kind of went a bit too far with it, and it's it kind of makes you a little bit fluttery in a way, but it's definitely something going on there. It's one to
I spoke to Mark Wong, who's the founder of Impossible Brew, on the show, so you can find out a bit more about why he chose those names. This is a fascinating story because they were on Dragon's Den. He got turned down, didn't get the money, but did wonders for the business. But funny that you mentioned the way it makes you feel. I also spoke to a chap who founded a functional beer brand called On Beer, ON Beer. And he was telling me that when they were in their R&D phase, he and his co-founder, they were obviously tasting their product to see how it was. And there was one night where he had about 5 or 6 bottles of his own beer. He said that the night was absolutely ruined. He couldn't sleep. He felt all jittery.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like caffeine.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to be aware. And obviously anything that has ingredients that impact you in any way, shape or form, you need to make sure that they are safe for you and for your physiology. But you mentioned caffeine, and caffeine is the ultimate functional drink. So it's nothing new. It's in coffee, it's in tea, and we drink those all the time. So it's just about finding the ones that sit well with you.
Yeah, interesting. I got nothing when I tried Impossible Brew.
Really?
From it? No, nothing at all. But at the same time, moving on to caffeine, one thing that has all the years in the industry, and certainly after taking alcohol out of the equation, caffeine certainly ramped up for me, and I drink an obscene amount of caffeine, which is not best. So maybe that's something to do with it. Maybe that my tolerance to caffeine masks it somewhat. But
and these functional drinks, not everybody's going to feel everything in the same way. That's a really good point, and it does depend as well on your physiology, your current state, and also how you lived beforehand. If you were a bit of a party animal and you subjected your body to lots and lots of different chemicals when you were out of an evening, the likelihood is that you're not going to feel it as much as somebody who's never had anything more than a strong cup of char. So it's going to be different for everyone.
And the other thing I get asked a lot, and we without going back too much into the wine, but is that association with food, because that's the other area, which is such a big area. And when I'm coaching people and they're looking to take a break, that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks. Hey, I love my glass of red with cheese, or a port with some cheese, or something like that. Do you have any recommendations circling around sort of accompanying low to no with food?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that That is a tricky one, because again, there is that expectation, isn't there? So you know how these two things work together, and if something comes along and it doesn't quite fit, then you're like, is this good enough? Um, I think particularly in the wine space, what we're seeing a lot of are wine alternatives, which are really worth investigating at the moment. One of the brands I absolutely love in that space is called Non, N-O-N. Now they're an Australian brand. So most of their SKUs, most of their products are available over there, but they do have three or four that are available here. And they make alcohol-free wine-style drinks from really fabulous ingredients like black coffee and dark cherries and just all these great foodie ingredients that get macerated together for a really long time, and those flavors blend and develop. And he's made these drinks with a love of food in mind. So it might be worth looking outside of what you're usually used to and trying things like that, trying things like um, sparkling kombuchas, which are going to be tea based, trying shrubs, which are vinegar based, and experimenting with different things that are made with natural ingredients, so therefore they do pair better with food. Um, the other thing as well is to speak to the restaurant and to speak to, if you're going to a restaurant that has a sommelier, for example, sommelier should be able to recommend something to you that is non-alcoholic that will complement your meal. And if they can't, then they're not doing their job properly. Um, but let people know that you're coming and say, look, I'm coming, I'm bringing some people and I want to have some amazing options. What do you have for me? And when they say they don't have anything, say, okay, great, I'm going to be bringing my own and you can open it for me. And that will put a rocket up them to make sure that they've got something in stock for when you're coming next time, because you know that you don't want to lose that money.
Yeah, it's still pretty crazy the amount of places you go and what alcohol-free alternative you got?
Oh,
We've got
yeah.
one. We've got one, and that's we didn't get a chance to speak about it earlier, but I'd love to get your views on. Obviously, it's been quite well documented, post COVID. Obviously how much the hospitality industry's been sort of struggling, and people aren't going back to pubs in the way they used to, and then we've got this huge industry that's just absolutely blossoming around alcohol-free alternatives. But you walk into a supermarket and every time I walk into Waitrose, they've got another two or three brands on the shelf. And it's just, it seems that the supermarkets are absolutely just cleaning up on alcohol-free alternatives. Whereas when you go into pubs and restaurants, they've got maybe one, if you're lucky, two or three, and perhaps some of the more progressive places, but it's still not anywhere near the same. But if there's 10 million people in this country that don't drink, and a lot of them, as you spoke about earlier, are younger, so 40% of people under 25 don't currently drink. That doesn't appear to be particularly well reflected when you go into a pub or into a restaurant. What are your thoughts on that?
And it's a crying shame. It really is. So I mentioned a company called Cam Insights before. They do research into consumer behavior in venues in other areas as well. One of the numbers from their research shows that every year our UK pubs and venues are leaving £800 million on the table by not having quality low and no alcohol options for people who don't want to drink. People are sitting there sipping on a glass of water or a lime and soda or an elderflower and soda if they're feeling posh. And the majority of people would be willing to spend money if they were given better options or any options in
Or any
some
options? Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
It's no longer okay. It's no longer acceptable to simply have one or two bottles of dusty alcohol-free beer in the bottom of the fridge next
No.
to the cut lines covered in dust and no one knows where they are. I've
Off
been
date.
into a pub and said to them, what alcohol-free options do you have? And the bartender didn't know. So he asked the other bartender. That
Yep.
bartender didn't know. So he went and go ask the manager. The manager came up, said to the first guy who served me, it's behind you in the fridge.
Yeah.
It's just not good enough. Our venues, and I say this with all the love in the world for pubs. I spent my entire formative and adult years working in the hospitality industry. I don't want to see our pubs go anywhere. I
No.
love going to the pub, whether I'm having alcohol, whether I'm not having alcohol, whether it's for food, whether it's to take my kids and have a nice little Sunday meal. These pubs are the cornerstone of our society and our culture. They're a meeting place. They are a safe haven for people. They are where we go and have fun. We go on dates. They're so important that venues need to recognize that having a decent alcohol-free selection is not a detriment to them. This is not going to take away from their alcohol sales. If anything, this is going to add value, because what venues need to remember and to recognize that it's not about that one person who doesn't drink coming in for that one
Mm.
alcohol-free beverage that one time. It's about service, and it's
Yeah.
about making people feel comfortable and welcome and looked after. And I can tell you from experience and for a fact that if you make that one person feel welcome and looked after when they come in for that one alcohol-free drink, and they only spend £4.50 and then they're gone. But on the weekend, when they're going out with six friends and they're the only person who doesn't drink, and their friends say, "Where shall we go?" And all their friends say, "Well, I don't care as long as I can get a drink." That one person who doesn't drink is going to say, "Well, actually, I know that if we go to this pub, I'm going to be really well looked after. So all of you come with me. Let's go and spend our money there." And that is where we're going to help these pubs to recognize that they can continue to serve everybody in our communities and to keep their businesses going and stop the immense amount of closures for pubs, which is just a crying shame.
You're so right, and there's someone from a hospitality background speaking right there. It's so true, isn't it? And it's that message once that leaves those four walls and goes outside, and everybody talking to their friends in a similar way. And I definitely will not name and shame the pub, but myself and my wife were out on a bike ride a few weeks ago, and we cycled past a pub that we've been wanting to go into for such a long time because it looked so beautiful. And we were in a bit of a rush. We popped in, we ordered 2 pints of lime and soda because they had no alcohol-free alternatives and a portion of chips, and it came to £15. And when I checked to see the cost, they were charging £5 for a pint of lime and soda. And that was not some flashy Fentimans bottle from the back shelf. It was Rose's lime cordial from a bottle, splash of into the glass, filled up with soda from the post-mix gun. And that beautiful pub, I will not go back. And I love pubs. I love the hospitality industry. I spent 30 plus years of my life working in it. And I think you're right. It will be a crying shame as to see pubs closing down because of such a growing market going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, that's just extortionate. That's just unbelievable. But I mean, that's an ultimate example of just terrible customer service, because you're not thinking about your customer there. You're just thinking about how can I get, a great GP by fleecing them, charging them £5 for something that cost me 10p. But it's so much more than just one drink and one person and one time. It's that experience. It's the friends that they're going to bring back. It's the word of mouth that you're going to get. It's that, that free marketing that you're going to tell people about it. And who knows what they're going to come back and spend money on. They might come and book their 50th birthday party, and then everyone's buying bottles of champagne.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. So that the pubs need to get it better. You can't just have one beer as well. And that's the other thing that gets me, is that quite often the ones that do have a good selection, they have a selection of beers. And just because you're drinking alcohol free doesn't mean you only want to drink beer. People want other things as well. There's so many spirits available out there. You could put together a little spritz menu, an alcohol free spritz menu with some great low bubbles. Have a bit of a variety for people to choose from. You don't just walk into a pub and have a gin. You have a selection, you have a range. And I'm not saying it needs to be like for like, because that wouldn't make sense, but you could definitely do better than just one or maybe two. And put some ciders in. I'm fed up of not finding alcohol-free ciders when I go into a pub.
Okay. I'd like to get some recommendations from you, Denise. Okay. And actually, Steve, we'll throw in some of our favourites as well, so the listeners have got plenty to have a look into. So
let's go for it.
Okay, let's have your top 5 beer recommendations, wine recommendations, and and another other alternatives outside of those 2 categories. So what do you got, Denise? What's currently on your menu?
So I always find these questions really tricky, because I'm very grateful. I get sent a lot of things. So I get to taste a lot of things. So sometimes it gets a bit hard to sort of keep them all in my mind. I've mentioned a couple already that I really like. So Natureo is, I think, a great wine, alcohol-free wine option. They do 0.0%, and they do a range. I think there's 4 or 5 in there. They're a Spanish company, but they can be found in the UK. And the best place to find most of these is not in the supermarkets, and it's not in your pubs. It's in dedicated online e-commerce retailers, places like Wise Bartender and Dry Drinker. That's where you find great selections. You mentioned Sentia as a functional. I love the Sentia Red. So
I've seen that,
Sentia
yeah.
do red, black, and they released a gold. They've also just released 2 alcohol-free functional beers, which I haven't tried yet, so I don't know. But the Sentia red, absolutely delicious. I don't like the other 2 very much.
Okay. Mhm.
Um, beer, let me think of beers. So there's a beer that I absolutely love, and it's made by a brewery called Renegade. But it's an alcohol-free peach lager. I think it's a lager. And no, it's an ale, sorry. But the good thing about them is they actually white label the beer for Marks and Spencers. So you can get this in your M&S, and it's absolutely lovely.
I think I've seen that.
I have. Yep.
Yeah, it's
I've seen
really,
that.
really delicious. What else is there? Which category haven't I covered? So I've done wine, I've done Eurofunctional. In spirits, there is a Scottish brand that I love called Ferragaya. And it is a dark spirit, alcohol-free dark spirit. And it is so earthy. It has got layers of flavor. It's really rich and complex. It works really well with like a ginger beer if you want something like, like a whiskey ginger sort of style. Also works really well in cocktails. And I quite like sipping on it. So even though it wasn't intended to be made that way, with a little bit of ice, I find that it's absolutely lovely. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of cocktails in a can. I think it's because I spent so long making drinks for other people that now I just want to be lazy. I just want someone to do it for me. And but for example, where we live, we've got lots of parks, so we often go for a picnic in the park. And to be able to bring along a cocktail in a can, to be able to sit while the kids go and play, and I can have something really tasty. There's a brand in that area that I love called Savills, Savyll.
Okay.
They make some amazing non-alcoholic, ready-to-drink cocktails. Their Bellini's really good. Another brand called Ish, ISH. They do lovely Palomas and mojito. So there's like so many great choices there. I could go on. There's so many different drinks in so many different categories that there really is some, and this is what's exciting. There's something for everyone. And so when someone says, "Oh, I don't like alcohol-free drinks," it's like, dude,
What?
how many have you tried? How many? 2. Okay, great. How many alcohol-full drinks have you tried? How many of them did you like? I mean, come on, we've all been there and had so many that were awful, but you powered through.
That's it.
You kept going.
You do have to try a few, don't you?
You do, but that's it. That's with anything, right? If you go to a restaurant and you have a burger and you don't like the burger, you're not going to say, right, that's it, I'm never eating burgers again. Yeah. So what about you guys? What are you drinking?
You're going to go first?
Sure. Well, I'm going to stay completely clear of the wines because like I said, I've offended a few people this week already talking about wine. So for me, I'm a big beer drinker, always have been. So absolutely love Lucky Saint. A lot of mine are kind of quite of the popular ones anyway. So you're probably not going to get a huge amount of insight of, oh, I've never heard of that one before. Pretty much go with a lot of the big brands here. So I think Lucky Saint would sit at the very top for me. I particularly like their lemon one as well. They released this summer, the Radler. I think that is exceptionally good. I'm not quite so keen on the IPA, but their main beer I think is absolutely best in class. I really love the Brewdog beers as well. I think they've got about 5 or 6 alcohol-free alternatives. They're all really, really good. Particularly Hazy Jane's probably my favourite. I really like the Big Drop beers. I think they're very, very good. The Pine Trail you see in quite a few places. That's very, very nice. Proper Job. I've probably stolen one of Steve's here. We've spoken about this before. Proper Job, I think, came out maybe in the last year or so. I was never really a big ale drinker, but I cannot get enough of that at the moment. I'm literally drinking it every single night. If you wanted like a kind of a mainstream one, I actually think Stella's quite good, and it's also quite cheap as well. You can get like 24 of them on Amazon for about like 18 quid. And outside of beers, I really like the sea lip gin that you spoke about earlier there with a nice tonic if I'm in a restaurant. And I also drink quite a lot of Equinox kombucha as well, organic kombucha that you can get in Waitrose. They're really, really nice. I think you've got to be a bit careful with the kombuchas because sometimes some of them can be a bit loaded in sugar and they can be, not proper kombuchas if they're pasteurized. But if you get organic ones and you read the labels, then that's probably the best one. What about you, Steve?
Oh, Caliber. Oh, way. Just another Caliber.
Old school.
The warmer and the dustier, the better.
The better.
Some similar ones there to you, James, within the beers. But I was in Munich last month, and I know you're going there next month or in the next couple of weeks.
Next week.
Yeah, I've had lots of friends in Munich over the years, so I've got a case of the Paulaner Helles outside at the moment, but I did pick it up in Munich on the way home, which is my current favourite. I love the Proper Job. Yeah, I like the Lucky Saints, but unlike you, James, I don't like the lemon, and I do like the hazy IPA. So I'm the other way round. Proper Job, yes, I like the Guinness. Yeah, in terms of it, and I've got to give a shout out to my next door neighbour, which is also a brewery. So I live next door to the Hogsback Brewery, and they do a lovely one called Little Swine, which is really nice as well. So yeah, and spirits wise, I tend to just go for the Tanqueray Sevilla at the moment, the zero, which mixes really well with a sort of tangerine tonic or something like that. Works really well.
I know it's with a spirit. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, as you mentioned, the beers that are more sort of mainstream. I think you've got to give a hat tip to Guinness.
Yeah.
Because I personally don't like Guinness, but that's fine. But their Guinness 0.0 is quite possibly the most respected and revered alcohol-free beer that I have come across. I ask all the brand founders on my show at the end what they drink in this space, and it is the most recommended beer by other producers. They've done a fantastic job. Most of the mainstream beer alternatives will taste pretty much nigh on exactly the same as their full strength ones. So if you like that, if you're a Peroni drinker, if you're a Heineken drinker, if you go for their 0%, and I always say to people, look, they're not the most exciting beers in the world, but you know what you're getting, and they're a great way to introduce yourself into the category. And you can find them in most places. Most pubs have got a Peroni Zero in a bottle somewhere.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying earlier about the draft and the difficulty with draft, and what I'm seeing and coming more and more now is the Guinness draft cans with the actual draft can machine on the bar, which obviously is going to reduce the cost of having a full keg behind the bar. And I know that Guinness Zero is available on draft around, and it's popping up, but keeping that cost down, where I don't know how exactly the machine works. It punctures the can and then creates a beautiful draft. Yeah, exactly. Those ones. And that's working really, really well as well. But I think because Guinness is such a definitive flavour, it's such a noted flavour, and there's such depth of flavour to something like a Guinness, that the ability for them to carry that through to zero is amazing. I think it's probably the most highly commented or commended beer that anybody mentions to me.
They are trying to, sorry, James, but they are trying to expand their draft offering. So they launched in the Devonshire, which is a very popular pub in London, earlier on this year, and they're trying to expand into more places, again, with that footfall issue. But you will find on draft, you will tend to find more bigger brands. The two most prolific will actually be Heineken Zero and actually Lucky Saint.
Lucky Saint, yeah.
Both are on draft in over 1,000 pubs in the UK each. So it is, you can find it out there. You just won't have as much of a variety option. But and I know that when I spoke to Peroni, their plans for next year are to increase their draft appearance on trade and in pubs. So there's more coming.
It's great to hear. Oh, I could speak about this all day long. I really could, and it's been such an insightful episode. I hope that our listeners will take a lot from this, just to realise that how far this has moved on and how many alternatives there are.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us. And it's been such a lovely chat to have.
I'll definitely echo that. I've learned tons that I didn't know. Thank you so much, Denise. Where can people find out a bit more about you?
First of all, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me on. It's always fun to talk about this subject. I think it's so exciting. So yeah, I hope that your listeners have enjoyed it and learnt a bit as well. As we're on a podcast, the easiest thing to do is, once you finish listening to this fabulous show, is to search for my show. You can either search Low No Drinker, or as James mentioned, I rebranded earlier on this year to Mindful Drinking and Moderation in Midlife, and I'm available on all platforms. And from there, you find all the other ways that you can come into the world of low, no, and light drinks, drinkers, and drinking.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
We will pop all of that in the show notes as well for those that want to follow through. And yeah, once again, thank you so much. It's been a great show and really, really enjoyed our chat.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you very much indeed.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.